I think we're live.
Well, excellent. I'm glad we're live.
Welcome everybody. This is story time. Sarah and I are going to let people trickle in because there's nothing like coming into a story halfway through and just being like, I missed it. So we're not going to do that. We're going to give this a few minutes, let folks come in. If you're here, let us know. And then Sarah is going to read the story. Now, actually, this is great because I don't even know the story here. Sarah, you said you had like a special relationship to this story.
I do.
You
I
had said that.
do.
What's the deal?
So 100 years ago, when I was in college, I was going to get my doctorate in Victorian feminist literature. Yeah.
You learn something
And
every day.
I know. And there was a really good program at Kentucky. And at the last minute, I decided that I was going to go into the workforce for a few years because guess what? The recession was hitting. And Asa, I know you're familiar with that. And so I was like, you know what? That's fine. I'll just put off, getting my doctorate for a couple years. Meanwhile, 20 years later, but you know what? I still love these stories. And when you suggested reading Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, published in 1892, it reminded me of, I don't know, it's sometimes a story that you read at one point in your life hits a little different in a later point of your life. And I reread this the other day, and it hits different in simultaneously different, but also like better, in a better way. So I do love a story that changes with you and that changes as you change, because that means you're putting yourself into the story and you're getting new stuff out of it.
Oh my
So
God, that's so
yeah,
inspiring.
I'm so excited. So yeah, things around this period. Also a big fan of Jane Eyre. There is an excellent, let me get it here because I was showing Asa, like, I have all of these books from like when I was going to get my doctorate in this.
This,
Um,
this is amazing.
and so I have also here The Mad Woman in the Attic, which is a 1970s first wave feminism look at this very common theme. So, spoiler, of mad women locked in attics in houses. And there's just so much interesting theory. And of course, this all reflects exactly what was going on at the time. So, sorry, I would talk about this all day.
I mean,
And
that's essentially what's about to happen. I want to, because this is a public domain story,
yes.
and I know that some folks have success reading along during a read aloud. I'm kind of one of those people. I'm just going to put this in the comments here. If anyone, or did you do that already?
Well, I
Or
just
just
put it, I put it in for Twitch. And if you want to put it in, perfect. Perfect.
Yeah, so there is the story in the comments. Hopefully that works. There's various copies that are
Yeah.
available to you, and yeah, this is a public domain story here.
Yes.
Gosh,
Mine is coming to us from this massive tome. And again, we were talking about this the other day when I first read this story. Asa, I think you showed us something that you had scribbled notes in. Was it Milton or Shakespeare? And you're like, this was past Asa, looking up all these
yeah,
words.
Paradise Lost and
Yeah.
past random person because I got to use. So it's
Oh, that's great.
yeah, neither of us were very smart.
That's okay.
Neither
Well, who is?
smart's too strong. I'm finding the comments now that I'm making a little more advanced.
Well, because you know better now. Like
Yeah.
those comments were you learning, and now you've learned the thing.
Yeah, no, I love my past self. There's no shame.
Good.
Have you all read this story before? I guess it's kind of a standard, right? They probably teach this in high school.
Well, and even if you haven't read the story, I'm sure that you've heard of these horrible things that were happening to women throughout most of history, but specifically for this case in the late 1800s. There were a lot of arguments what women should and shouldn't be doing, again, as there has always been throughout history. And this story focuses on, you're going to see firsthand something that's called a rest cure. And a rest cure was for hysterical women. So women who did not want to be either coerced or controlled by usually the male counterparts in their lives. And it was a way to pacify them. It was a way to take away any agency. And it was a way to do all of that, these deeply abusive things under the guise of health, under the guise of this is a cure. It was called the rest cure. So if, a lot of us now find catharsis in writing, in art, whatever it is that you love to do. Basically, women were not allowed to do those things because they were too exciting. It would, whatever, boil their blood or whatnot. So yeah.
That's great context. Okay, so we're going to fire up this story here momentarily, but some more context just before we do. This is a horror short story anthology. So right before we start the story here, I just want to read this additional piece of context because this is actually really great. Charlotte Perkins Gilman, feminist and reformer, wrote only one horror story.
Oh.
And that won such an outstanding masterpiece that it has seldom been equaled in this century. Only perhaps in the work of Shirley Jackson and Joanna Russ. The Yellow Wallpaper is either a haunted house story or a story of insanity, but in either case, it is a monument of feminist horror pointing out subtly and effectively all the restrictions which bring the central character to the moment of the story. This is the classic response to the story of male guilt and horror at how badly a woman has been treated, making the case for all time that the horror story need not be conservative. So get stoked, y'all.
Love it. I got shivers. I love that.
Great. All right. Well, settle in, everybody. Get comfortable. Read, pull up the text if you like. And I'm going to put my phone on microphone. Yeah. I'm going to put my mic on mute. And however you want to wade into this, Sarah, whenever you're ready.
Wonderful. All right. I've got the text right here, and we're just going to go right ahead. So I've got tea, I've got water. Settle down, settle in. Well, maybe settle down. You might be hysterical. I don't know. I don't know these things. All right. We're going to go ahead and dive in. This is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It is very seldom that mere ordinary people like John and myself secure ancestral halls for the summer. A colonial mansion, a hereditary estate, I would say a haunted house, and reach the height of romantic felicity. But that would be asking too much of fate. Still, I will proudly declare that there is something queer about it. Else, why should it be let so cheaply? And why have it stood so long untenanted? John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage. John is practical in the extreme. He has no patience with faith, an intense horror of superstition, and he scoffs openly at any talk of things not to be felt and seen and put down in figures. John is a physician, and perhaps, I would not say it to a living soul, of course, but this is dead paper and a great relief to my mind. Perhaps that is one reason I do not get well faster. You see, he does not believe that I am sick. And what can one do? If a physician of high standing and one's own husband assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression, a slight hysterical tendency, what is one to do? My brother is also a physician and also of high standing, and he says the same thing. So I take phosphates or phosphites, whatever it is, and tonics and journeys and air and exercise, and am absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree with their ideas. Personally, I believe that congenial work with excitement and change would do me good. But what is one to do? I did write for a while in spite of them, but it does exhaust me a great deal, having to be so sly about it, or else meet with heavy opposition. I sometimes fancy that in my condition, if I had less opposition and more society and stimulus, but John says the very worst thing I can do is think about my condition, and I confess it always makes me feel bad. So I will let it alone and talk about the house. The most beautiful place. It is quite alone, standing well back from the road, quite 3 miles from the village. It makes me think of English places that you read about. For there are hedges and walls and gates that lock, and lots of separate little houses for the gardeners and people. There is a delicious garden. I never saw such a garden. Large and shady, full of box-bordered paths and lined with long grape-covered arbors with seats under them. There were greenhouses too, but they are all broken now. There was some legal trouble, I believe, something about the heirs and co-heirs. Anyhow, the place has been empty for years. That spoils my ghostliness, I am afraid, but I don't care. There is something strange about the house. I can feel it. I even said so to John one moonlight evening, but he said what I felt was a draft and shut the window. I get unreasonably angry with John sometimes. I'm sure I never used to be so sensitive. I think it is due to this nervous condition. But John says if I feel so, I shall neglect proper self-control. So I take pains to control myself, before him at least. And that makes me very tired. I don't like our room a bit. I wanted one downstairs that opened on the piazza and had roses all over the window and such pretty old-fashioned chintz hangings, but John would not hear of it. He said there was only one window and not room for two beds and no near room for him if he took another. He is very careful and loving and hardly lets me stir without special direction. I have a scheduled prescription for each hour in the day. He takes all care for me, so I feel basely ungrateful not to value it more. He said we came here solely on my account, that I was to have perfect rest and all the air I could get. Your exercise depends on your strength, my dear, said he, and your food somewhat on your appetite, but air you can absorb all the time. So we took the nursery at the top of the house. It is a big, airy room, the whole floor nearly, with windows that look all ways, and air and sunshine galore. It was a nursery first, and then playground and gymnasium, I should judge, for the windows are barred for little children, and there are rings and things in the walls. The paint and paper look as if a boys' school had used it. It is stripped off, the paper, in great patches all around the head of my bed, about as far as I can reach, and in a great place on the other side of the room low down. I never saw worse paper in my life. One of those sprawling, flamboyant patterns committing every artistic sin. It is dull enough to confuse the eye in following, pronounced enough to constantly irritate and provoke study, and when you follow the lame, uncertain curves for a little distance, they suddenly commit suicide, plunge off at outrageous angles, destroy themselves in unheard-of contradictions. The color is repellent, almost revolting, a smoldering, unclean yellow, strangely faded by the slow-turning sunlight. It is a dull yet lurid orange in some places, a sickly sulfur tint in others. No wonder the children hated it. I should hate it myself if I had to live in this room long. There comes John, and I must put this away. He hates to have me write a word. We have been here 2 weeks, and I haven't felt like writing before since that first day. I'm sitting by the window now, up in this atrocious nursery, where there is nothing to hinder my writing as much as I please, save lack of strength. John is away all day, and even some nights when his cases are serious. I'm glad my case is not serious. But these nervous troubles are dreadfully depressing. John does not know how much I really suffer. He knows there's no reason to suffer, and that satisfies him. Of course, it is only nervousness. It does weigh on me so not to do my duty in any way. I meant to be such a help to John, such a rest and comfort, and here I am, a comparative burden already. Nobody would believe what an effort it is to do what little I am able to do, to dress and entertain and order things. It is fortunate Mary is so good with the baby, such a dear baby. And yet I cannot be with him. It makes me so nervous. I suppose John was never nervous in his life. He laughs at me so about this wallpaper. At first, he meant to repaper the room, but afterwards he said that I was letting it get the better of me and that nothing was worse for a nervous patient than to give way to such fancies. He said that after the wallpaper was changed, it would be the heavy bedstead and the barred windows, and then that gate at the head of the stairs, and so on. You know the place is doing you good, he said. And really, dear, I don't care to renovate the house just for a 3 months rental. Oh, then let us do go downstairs, I said. There are such pretty rooms there. Then he took me in his arms and called me a blessed little goose, and said he would go down to the cellar if I wished, and have it whitewashed in the bargain. But he is right enough about the beds and windows and things. It is as airy and comfortable a room as anyone need wish, and of course, I would not be so silly as to make him uncomfortable just for a whim. I'm really quite fond of the big room, all but that horrid paper. Out of one window, I can see the garden, those mysterious deep-shaded arbors, the riotous old-fashioned flowers and bushes and gnarly trees. Out of another, I get a lovely view of the bay and a little private wharf belonging to the estate. There is a beautiful shaded lane that runs down there from the house. I always fancy I see people walking in these numerous paths and arbors, but John has cautioned me not to give way to fancy in the least. He says that with my imaginative power and habit of story making, a nervous weakness like mine is sure to lead to all manner of excited fancies, and that I ought to use my will and good sense to check the tendency. So I try. I think sometimes that if I were only well enough to write a little, it would relieve the press of ideas and rest me. But I find I get pretty tired when I try. It is so discouraging not to have any advice and companionship about my work. When I get really well, John says we will ask Cousin Henry and Julia down for a long visit, but he says he would as soon put fireworks in my pillowcase as to let me have those stimulating people about now. I wish I could get well faster, but I must not think about that. This paper looks to me as if it knew what a vicious influence it had. There is a recurrent spot where the pattern lulls like a broken neck and two bulbous eyes stare at you upside down. I get positively angry with the impertinence of it and the everlastingness. Up and down and sideways they crawl, and those absurd, unblinking eyes are everywhere. There is one place where two breadths didn't match, and the eyes go all up and down the line, one a little higher than the other. I never saw so much expression in an inanimate thing before, and we all know how much expression they have. I used to lie awake as a child and get more entertainment and terror out of blank walls and plain furniture than most children could find in a toy store. I remember what a kindly wink the knobs of our big old bureau used to have, and there was one chair that always seemed like a strong friend. I used to feel that if any of the other things looked too fierce, I could always hop into that chair and be safe. The furniture in this room is no worse than inharmonious, however, for we have had to bring it all from downstairs. I suppose when this was used as a playroom, they had to take the nursery things out, and no wonder. I never saw such ravages as the children have made here. The wallpaper, as I said before, is torn off in spots, and it sticketh closer than a brother. They must have had perseverance as well as hatred. Then the floor is scratched and gouged and splintered. The plaster itself is dug out here and there, and this great heavy bed, which is all we found in the room, looks as though it had been through the wars. But I don't mind it a bit. Only the paper. Ah, there comes John's sister. Such a dear girl as she is, and so careful of me. I must not let her find me writing. She is an enthusiastic housekeeper, and hopes for no better profession. I verily believe she thinks it is the writing which made me sick. But I can write when she is out, and see her a long way off from these windows. There is one that commands the road, a lovely, shaded, winding road, and one that just looks off over the country. A lovely country, too, full of great elms and velvet meadows. This wallpaper has a kind of sub-pattern in a different shade, a particularly irritating one, for you can only see it in certain lights and not clearly then. But in the places where it isn't faded and where the sun is just so, I can see a strange, provoking, formless sort of figure that seems to sulk about behind that silly and conspicuous front design. Oh, there's Sister on the stairs. Well, the 4th of July is over. The people are all gone and I am tired out. John thought it might do me good to see a little company, so we just had Mother and Nellie and the children down for a week. Of course, I didn't do a thing. Jenny sees to everything now. But it tired me all the same. John says if I don't pick up faster, he shall send me to Ware Mitchell in the fall. But I don't want to go there at all. I had a friend who was in his hands once, and she says he is just like John and my brother, only more so. Besides, it is such an undertaking to go so far. I don't feel as if it was worthwhile to turn my hand over for anything, and I'm getting dreadfully fretful and querulous. I cry at nothing, and cry most of the time. Of course, I don't when John is here or anybody else, but when I am alone. And I am alone a good deal just now. John is kept in town very often by serious cases, and Jenny is good and lets me alone when I want her to. So I walk a little in the garden or down that lovely lane, sit on the porch under the roses, and lie down up here a good deal. I'm getting really fond of the room in spite of the wallpaper. Perhaps because of the wallpaper. It dwells in my mind so. I lie here on this great immovable bed, it is nailed down, I believe, and follow that pattern about by the hour. It is as good as gymnastics, I assure you. I start, we'll say, at the bottom, down in the corner over there where it has not been touched, and I determine for the 1000th time that I will follow that pointless pattern to some sort of conclusion. I know a little of the principles of design, and I know this thing was not arranged on any laws of radiation or alternation or repetition or symmetry or anything else that I ever heard of. It is repeated, of course, by the breadths, but not otherwise. Looked at in one way, each breadth stands alone, the bloated curves and flourishes, a kind of debased Romanesque with delirium tremens, go waddling up and down in isolated columns of fatuity. But on the other hand, they connect diagonally, and the sprawling outlines run off in great slanting waves of optic horror, like a lot of wallowing seaweeds in full chase. The whole thing goes horizontally, too, at least it seems so, and I exhaust myself in trying to distinguish the order of its going in that direction. They have used a horizontal breadth for a frieze, and that adds wonderfully to the confusion. There is one end of the room where it is almost intact, and there, when the cross lights fade and the low sun shines directly upon it, I can almost fancy radiation after all. The interminable grotesques seem to form around a common center and rush off in headlong plunges of equal distraction. It makes me tired to follow it. I will take a nap, I guess. I don't know why I should write this. I don't want to. I don't feel able. And I know John would think it absurd, but I must say what I feel and think in some way. It is such a relief. But the effort is getting to be greater than the relief. Half the time now I am awfully lazy and lie down ever so much. John says I mustn't lose my strength, and he has me take cod liver oil and lots of tonics and things, to say nothing of ale and wine and rare meat. Dear John, he loves me very dearly and hates to have me sick. I tried to have a real, earnest, reasonable talk with him the other day and tell him how I wished he would let me go and make a visit to Cousin Henry and Julia. But he said I wasn't able to go, nor able to stand it after I got there. And I did not make out a very good case for myself, for I was crying before I had finished. It is getting to be a great effort for me to think straight, just this nervous weakness, I suppose. And dear John, gathered me up in his arms and just carried me upstairs and laid me on the bed and sat by me and read to me till he tired my head. He said I was his darling and his comfort and all he had, and that I must take care of myself for his sake and keep well. He says no one but myself can help me out of it, that I yet must use my will and self-control and not let my silly fancies run away with me. There's one comfort. The baby is well and happy and does not have to occupy this nursery with the horrid wallpaper. If we had not used it, that blessed child would have. What a fortunate escape. Why, I wouldn't have a child of mine, an impressionable little thing, live in such a room for worlds. I never thought about it before, but it's lucky that John kept me here after all. I can stand it so much easier than a baby, you see. Of course, I never mention it to them anymore. I am too wise. But I keep watch of it all the same. There are things in that paper that nobody knows but me, or ever will. Behind that outside pattern, the dim shapes get clearer every day. It is always the same shape, only very numerous. And it is like a woman stooping down and creeping about behind that pattern. I don't like it a bit. I wonder, I begin to think, I wish John would take me away from here. It is so hard to talk with John about my case because he is so wise and because he loves me so, but I tried it last night. It was moonlight. The moon shines in all around just as the sun does. I hate to see it sometimes. It creeps so slowly and always comes in by one window or another. John was asleep and I hated to waken him, so I kept still and watched the moonlight on that undulating wallpaper till I felt creepy. The faint figure behind seemed to shake the pattern, just as if she wanted to get out. I got up softly and went to feel and see if the paper did move, and when I came back, John was awake. "What is it, little girl?" he said. "Don't go walking about like that. You'll get cold." I thought it was a good time to talk, so I told him that I was really not gaining here and that I wished he would take me away. "Why, darling," said he, "our lease will be up in 3 weeks, and I can't see how to leave before. The repairs are not done at home, and I cannot possibly leave town just now. Of course, if you were in any danger, I could and would, but really, you are better, dear, whether you can see it or not. I am a doctor, dear, and I know. You are gaining flesh and color, your appetite is better. I feel really much easier about you." "I don't weigh a bit more," said I, "nor as much, and my appetite may be better in the evening when you are here, but it is worse in the morning when you are away." "Bless her little heart," said he with a big hug. "She shall be as sick as she pleases. But now let's improve the shining hours by going to sleep and talk about it in the morning." "And you won't go away?" I asked gloomily. "Why, how can I, dear? It is only 3 weeks more, and then we will take a nice little trip of a few days while Jenny is getting the house ready. Really, dear, you are better." "Better in body, perhaps," I began, and stopped short, for he had sat up straight and looked at me with such a stern, reproachful look that I could not say another word. "My darling," said he, "I beg of you, for my sake and for our child's sake, as well as for your own, that you will never for one instant let that idea enter your mind. There is nothing so dangerous, so fascinating to a temperament like yours. It is a false and foolish fancy. Can you not trust me as a physician when I tell you so?" So, of course, I said no more on that score, and we went to sleep before long. He thought I was asleep first, but I wasn't. I lay there for hours, trying to decide whether that front pattern and the back pattern really did move together or separately. On a pattern like this, by daylight, there is a lack of sequence, a defiance of law that is a constant irritant to a normal mind. The color is hideous enough and unreliable enough and infuriating enough, but the pattern is torturing. You think you've mastered it, but just as you get well underway in following, it turns a back somersault, and there you are. It slaps you in the face, knocks you down, and tramples upon you. It is like a bad dream. The outside pattern is a florid arabesque, reminding one of a fungus. If you can imagine a toadstool in joints, an interminable string of toadstools budding and sprouting in endless convolutions, why, that is something like it. That is, sometimes. There is one marked peculiarity about this paper, a thing nobody seems to notice but myself, and that is it changes as the light changes. When the sun shoots in through the east window, I always watch for that first long, straight ray. It changes so quickly that I can never quite believe it. That is why I watch it always. By moonlight, the moon shines in all night when there is a moon, I wouldn't know it was the same paper. At night, in any kind of light, in twilight, candlelight, lamplight, and worst of all, by moonlight, it becomes bars. The outside pattern, I mean. And the woman behind it is as plain as can be. I didn't realize for a long time what the thing that was showed behind, that dim sub-pattern, but now I am quite sure it is a woman. By daylight, she is subdued, quiet. I fancy it is the pattern that keeps her so still. It is so puzzling. It keeps me quiet by the hour. I lie down ever so much now. John says it is good for me, so I sleep all I can. Indeed, he started the habit by making me lie down for an hour after each meal. It is a very bad habit, I am convinced, for you see, I don't sleep. And that cultivates deceit, for I don't tell them I'm awake. Oh, no. The fact is, I am getting a little afraid of John. He seems very queer sometimes, and even Jenny has an inexplicable look. It strikes me occasionally, just as a scientific hypothesis, that perhaps it is the paper. I have watched John when he did not know I was looking, and come into the room suddenly on the most innocent excuses, and have caught him several times looking at the paper. And Jenny, too. I caught Jenny with her hand on it once. She didn't know I was in the room, and when I asked her in a very quiet voice, with the most restrained manner possible, what she was doing with the paper, she turned around as if she had been caught stealing and looked quite angry, and asked me why I should frighten her so. Then she said that the paper stained everything it touched, that she had found yellow smooches on all of my clothes and John's, and she wished we would be more careful. Did that not sound innocent? But I know she was studying that pattern, and I am determined that nobody shall find it out but myself. Life is very much more exciting now than it used to be. You see, I have something more to expect, to look forward to watch. I really do eat better and am more quiet than I was. John is so pleased to see me improve. He laughed a little the other day and said I seemed to be flourishing in spite of my wallpaper. I turned it off with a laugh. I had no intention of telling him it was because of the wallpaper. He would make fun of me. He might even want to take me away. I don't want to leave now that I have found it out. There's a week more, and I think that will be enough. I'm feeling ever so much better. I don't sleep much at night, for it is so interesting to watch developments, but I sleep a good deal in the daytime. In the daytime, it is tiresome and perplexing. There were always new shoots on the fungus and new shades of yellow all over it. I cannot keep count of them, though I have tried conscientiously. It is the strangest yellow, that wallpaper. It makes me think of all the yellow things I ever saw. Not beautiful ones like buttercups, but old, foul, bad yellow things. But there is something else about that paper. The smell. I noticed it the moment we came into the room, but with so much air and sun, it was not bad. Now we have had a week of fog and rain, and whether the windows are open or not, the smell is here. It creeps all over the house. I find it hovering in the dining room, skulking in the parlor, hiding in the hall, lying in wait for me on the stairs. It gets into my hair. Even when I go to ride, if I turn my head suddenly and surprise it, there is that smell. Such a peculiar odor, too. I've spent hours trying to analyze it, to find what it smelled like. It is not bad at first and very gentle, but The subtlest, most enduring odor I ever met. In this damp weather, it is awful. I wake up in the night and find it hanging over me. It used to disturb me at first. I thought seriously of burning the house to reach the smell, but now I am used to it. The only thing I can think of is that it is like the color of the paper, a yellow smell. There is a very funny mark on this wall low down near the mop board, a streak that runs around the room. It goes behind every piece of furniture except the bed, a long, straight, even smooch, as if it had been rubbed over and over. I wonder how it was done and who did it and what they did it for. Round and round and round, round and round and round. It makes me dizzy. I really have discovered something at last. Through watching so much at night when it changes so, I have finally found out. The front pattern does move. And no wonder. The woman behind shakes it. Sometimes I think there are a great many women behind, and sometimes only one, and she crawls around fast, and her crawling shakes it all over. Then, in the very bright spots, she keeps still, and in the very shady spots, she just takes hold of the bars and shakes them hard. And she is all the time trying to climb through. But nobody could climb through that pattern. It strangles so. I think that is why it has so many heads. They get through, though, and then the pattern strangles them off and turns them upside down and makes their eyes white. If those heads were covered or taken off, it would not be half so bad. I think that woman gets out in the daytime, and I'll tell you why privately. I've seen her. I can see her out of every one of my windows. It is the same woman I know, for she is always creeping, and most women do not creep by daylight. I see her in that long shaded lane, creeping up and down. I see her in those dark grape arbors, creeping all around the garden. I see her on that long road under the trees, creeping along, and when a carriage comes, she hides under the blackberry vines. I don't blame her a bit. It must be very humiliating to be caught creeping by daylight. I always lock the door when I creep by daylight. I can't do it at night, for I know John would suspect something at once. And John is so queer now that I don't want to irritate him. I wish he would take another room. Besides, I don't want anybody to get that woman out at night but myself. I often wonder if I could see her out of all the windows at once. But turn as fast as I can only see out of one at a time. And though I always see her, she may be able to creep faster than I can turn. I have watched her sometimes away off in the open country, creeping as fast as a cloud shadow in a high wind. If only that top pattern could be gotten off from the under one. I mean to try it little by little. I have found out another funny thing, but I shan't tell it at this time. It does not do to trust people too much. There are only 2 more days to get this paper off, and I believe John is beginning to notice. I don't like the look in his eyes. And I heard him ask Jenny a lot of professional questions about me. She had a very good report to give. She said I slept a good deal in the daytime. John knows I don't sleep very well at night, for all I'm so quiet. He asked me all sorts of questions, too, and pretended to be very loving and kind, as if I couldn't see through him. Still, I don't wonder he acts so, sleeping under this paper for 3 months. It only interests me, but I feel sure John and Jenny are secretly affected by it. Hurrah! This is the last day, but it is enough. John is to stay in town overnight and won't be out until this evening. Jenny wanted to sleep with me, the sly thing, but I told her I should undoubtedly rest better for a night all alone. That was clever, for really, I wasn't alone a bit. As soon as it was moonlight and that poor thing began to crawl and shake the pattern, I got up and ran to help her. I pulled and she shook. I shook and she pulled. And before morning, we had peeled off yards of that paper. A strip about as high as my head and half around the room. And then when the sun came and that awful pattern began to laugh at me, I declared I would finish it today. We go away tomorrow, and they are moving all my furniture down again to leave things as they were before. Jenny looked in at the wall in amazement, but I told her merrily that I did it out of pure spite at the vicious thing. She laughed, and she said she wouldn't mind doing it herself, but I must not get tired. How she betrayed herself that time. But I am here, and no person touches this paper but me, not alive. She tried to get me out of the room. It was too patent. But I said it was so quiet and empty and clean now that I believed I would lie down again and sleep all I could, and not even to wake me for dinner. I would call when I woke. So now she is gone, and the servants are gone, and the things are gone, and there is nothing left but that great bedstead nailed down with the canvas mattress we found on it. We shall sleep downstairs tonight and take the boat home tomorrow. I quite enjoy the room now that it is bare again. How those children did tear about here. The bedstead is fairly gnawed. But I must get to work. I have locked the door and thrown the key down to the front path. I don't want to go out, and I don't want to have anybody come in till John comes. I want to astonish him. I've got a rope up here that even Jenny did not find. If that woman does get out and tries to get away, I can tie her. But I forgot. I could not reach far without anything to stand on. This bed will not move. I tried to lift and push it until I was lame, and then I got so angry I bit off a little piece at one corner, but it hurt my teeth. Then I peeled off all the paper I could reach standing on the floor. It sticks horribly, and the pattern just enjoys it. All those strangled heads and bulbous eyes and waddling fungus growths just shriek with derision. I am getting angry enough to do something desperate. To jump out of the window would be an admirable exercise, but the bars are too strong even to try. Besides, I wouldn't do it, of course not. I know well enough that a step like that is improper and might be misconstrued. I don't like to look out of the windows even. There are so many of those creeping women, and they creep so fast. I wonder if they all come out of that wallpaper as I did. But I am securely fastened now by my well-hidden rope. You don't get me out in the road there. I suppose I shall have to get back behind the pattern when it comes night, and that is hard. It is so pleasant to be out in this great room and creep around as I please. I don't want to go outside. I won't, even if Jenny asks me to. For outside, you have to creep on the ground, and everything is green instead of yellow. But here, I can creep smoothly on the floor, and my shoulder just fits in that long smooch along the wall, so I cannot lose my way. Why, there's John at the door. It's no use, young man, you can't open it. How he does call and pound. Now he's crying for an axe. It would be a shame to break down that beautiful door. John, dear, said I in the gentlest voice, the key is down by the front steps under a plantain leaf. That silenced him for a few moments. Then he said, very quietly indeed, open the door, my darling. I can't, said I. The key is down by the front door under a plantain leaf. And then I said it again, several times, very gently and slowly, and said it so often that he had to go and see. And he got it, of course, and came in. He stopped short by the door. What is the matter? He cried. For God's sake, what are you doing? I kept on creeping just the same, but I looked at him over my shoulder. I've got out at last, said I, in spite of you and Jane. And I've pulled off most of the paper so you can't put me back. Now, why should that man have fainted? But he did, right across my path by the wall, so that I had to creep over him every time. Whew. The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
Whoa. Oh, man.
How are we feeling?
A little undone. That was crazy. It definitely got under our skin.
Yeah.
Or my skin.
Yeah, well, and I mean, that's like the whole crux of the story is getting under the skin, getting under things, twining yourself in with your, it's just, I'm really excited right now.
Oof, God, I can't wait to try to break this down with you. So if you're hopping in for the analysis part of this, Sarah and I are writers, and what we've been doing here is for some months now is going through horror stories, sci-fi stories, short stories as writers to try to dissect these, see what we can take and learn from them. And I feel like we can learn a lot from this.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like every time I read it, it's a little bit different. I don't know. It maybe rewrites itself just like the wallpaper patterns over itself. So
I'm going to just stall here and just be like, what else do people think? I'm just kind of like blown away. I don't even know where to begin with this story.
Well, let's begin at the beginning.
Okay.
Our premise is we have the unnamed woman, and we have John, her husband, who's a physician, who definitely knows what's best for her. And we have this house, and she almost wants it to be a haunted house. So she's a person like with some fancy and imagination that obviously like must be stomped out because we can't have that. There's some nice comments coming in. Thank you.
Yeah, let's get everyone acknowledged here. BA says, suggestion, you offer a Patreon level of just reading stories. Listen, you want to send us money. We don't have to do Patreon level. I mean, look, send you an address, checkbook. But I like where your head's at. I'm glad to know that you really enjoyed the story. Takashi says, interesting how it does for the general aspects of the house and then just hyper-focus on the wallpaper. That aligns with what you're saying, Sarah. It starts out about the house. Lore Huntress, I'm just as unsettled now as when I first read it. Great job, Sarah. So well read.
Thank you.
I feel that. I joined Sarah's Patreon yesterday. Well, there you go, folks.
Thank you.
That is
Thank
great.
you. I'll read you some stories.
Yeah, stories. Yay. Okay. So at the beginning, we've got this haunted house. And then, yes, we get focused on this yellow wallpaper. I mean, I just sort of still have to have like a tiny bit of an emotional experience here before I really get analytical, which is that it's like, did she take John down with her? I don't know. I mean, we clearly see a descent. There's a psychological descent. Is it one that destroys her, or is this actually on some like she's getting powerful by like turning or something like that? Yeah. I don't. Yeah. Okay, but carry on. I'm going to follow your lead here, Sarah.
Okay.
You had a line, so I will follow it.
Yeah. Well, I also don't want to be so pop in anytime, and anyone in the comments, if you want to discuss this story, you are part of this. That's exactly where I want to start. Takashi just commented agency. So there's a woman moving into a house. It's a beautiful old crumbly house. She's being moved in against her will. She doesn't want to live here. She gets taken into the house. She wants one of the downstairs bedrooms. Her husband says, no, that's not good for you. You need to be up in the attic, which ironically / purposely / coincidentally is something that used to be a quote unquote children's nursery where the bed is nailed down to the floor and there are iron rings on the walls. Definitely not being used for shackles or anything like that. It's definitely not that. I'm being a little facetious. I'm sorry. And also, if my reading of the story comes across too strong, please know this is just my interpretation and my opinion. Okay. I'm not telling you what it's about. Okay.
I'm here to listen to your take all day.
Okay, good. Okay. So the wife, the main character, is unwell, and she knows that she's sick because her husband tells her she's sick. She also has, the other thing we know about her is she has just given birth to a child. And I think the premise of the story is they're getting their normal house ready for the baby to move in, and in the meantime they're staying in this like country estate. And the author slash narrator writes off immediately that the house could be haunted. She's like, I wish it were haunted, but it's just a house. And so, initially, so we even have that like seed planted of, is this a haunted house, or is this a story of cruelty and abuse and madness, or both potentially? So yeah, they put her up in the nursery that has iron bars on the windows because you need to keep the children safe inside the nursery, and this horrible wallpaper, which like Takashi said, initially she's focused on the house. She's looking at the gardens, she's looking at the other rooms, she's wishing she could be in a different room. And then by the end of the story, she is obsessed with the wallpaper. She's looking for a pattern in it and she's not finding one. And she's looking for meaning in it and she's not finding any. And Takashi, what you said about agency. Yes, Jimmy says the story is partly autobiographical. Yes, Charlotte Perkins Gilman initially wrote this story under, either she wrote it under her maiden's name or her maiden's name. It was one of them. She ended up leaving her husband. She had a child with her husband and they ended up leaving him. And then she went to, gosh, it's been 20 years. She went to somewhere in the northeastern United States and worked for the suffragette movement and did all sorts of interesting political stuff. But yeah, agency. So when we talk about agency, we're talking about how much control does somebody have over the situation that they're in? How much freedom do they have to act? And in this story, you have a woman who is, I spoke at the beginning of today's story club session about the thing called the rest cure. And there are all sorts of ways that society wants to, for a number of different reasons, control other people. In this case, we're talking about women being controlled by certain men. And we're not expressly told like why this happens. If it's just that John enjoys having control, he calls her his little girl, he calls her his comfort. He says she's the only thing in his life. She's just a little doll that lives in the attic for him. And we don't know if John is doing any of this stuff maliciously or if he's literally just like, no, this is healthy for you, babe. And you can pick up what you want from he has very limited dialogue in the story, obviously. There's some good comments.
Some more great
yes.
Comments coming in. Takashi Yi 88 says, it feels like that scene in Jane Eyre when we as readers find out about the truth about Mr. Rochester's first wife.
Yes, Bertha, I believe. Yeah.
Lore Huntress says, that room makes me think of Heathcliff's wife, Isabella, and how he isolates her and drives her insane. Jimmy says she was actually told by a doctor to stop working, writing, etc. to cure an ailment. She quit doing it on her own because it was bad for her health, and she caught herself hyperfixating.
Thank you for that, Jimmy. I didn't know it was like that specifically, that explicitly close, but I mean, and I think that it's interesting to talk about this as writers because, I mean, Asa, why do you write, and what does it do for you?
Well, I mean, it doesn't save her from madness, because that was something I noted, that she sees writing as a relief, and she's like, I tried to write, but I couldn't. I thought that was an interesting and surprising piece of characterization, that this character was a writer, and I kind of wanted to know more about that. I like what you were saying a second ago about the extent to which the husband, John, was malevolent or oblivious. And I like how that's left open.
Yeah.
And I think that because it was left open for me, I felt the more just oblivious interpretation, which I think is the darker one. Because yeah, I mean, just systemic cruelty and just sort of these currents of misogyny, they're so deeply ingrained that people don't even know they're inflicting cruelty. And that was really scary. And sort of the dispassionate portrayal of that,
Mm,
I thought was really powerful.
yeah. It also strikes me as we talk a lot about gaslighting, and often I think we get that confused with like, oh, just being lied to. But in this case, I believe she really is being gaslit. And again, we don't know if it's malicious or intentional, or if he really does think that this is for her own good. And if you look at how like mental patients have been treated in psychiatric hospitals over the centuries, there's a lot of the cruelty for your own good mentality that goes around. Um, yeah, Takashi says, yeah,
Creation versus isolation. She begins to create a reality at the moment she hyperfixes on the wallpaper. Okay, actually, that's like a really cool, interesting thought from a character point of view, is that a means for her to escape this oppression, to escape this abuse, is to make something. And of course, ironically, what she makes is not real, it's an artificial reality. But in that, she finds solace, and she even finds accompaniment with this woman that she imagines and puts into the wallpaper.
yeah,
That's cool. And
yeah.
what that says is cool.
Well, and even looking at Jane Eyre, back when I was studying this for, I guess for funsies now, I didn't go and get another degree or anything, but you'll notice a really interesting correlation in these late 19th century women figures. Jane Eyre was a painter. Jane Eyre was an artist. Um, and you'll find a lot of women who aren't sure what to do with their creativity. And again, looking at agency in a societal sense, is she allowed to become an author? Is she allowed to become a painter? No, in Jane Eyre's case, she has to be a governess because that is the thing that is available to her. Like that is the path she has to be on. And there's so much looking at mad women trapped in attics. Again, there's Bertha in Jane Eyre. And we've got our poor, beautiful narrator in this one. Women who are being tortured because in some cases, their means of creation are being taken away from them. So she's not supposed to write. Our main character in the Yellow Wallpaper is not supposed to be writing because it will tax her nerves. Really, I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm wondering maybe if this, I don't remember what it was, this nervous temperament disorder, if that's just postpartum depression of some sort or something like that. Um, but yeah, and then her child has also been taken away from her. They don't make a big point in the story of talking about this, but her baby
Well,
is
we kind of slid
given.
by it
Yeah, yeah,
because she's like, well, thankfully, she's like the kid's in good hands.
yeah, yeah. Aunt Jenny. Yeah,
Right. So there's like a simultaneous acceptance, quote unquote, that she's flawed, that she's ill, yet a constant resistance to it. And I guess that is the sort of tragedy that we're seeing, is this woman's inability to listen to herself. I guess something along those lines.
maybe. Or is it the fact that she is listening to herself? She does argue with John several times. She does say, I want to go for a walk. I would like to write. And he says, no, you silly little thing. You can't do that. You can't leave. And, you know, uh, I feel like I had like three different ideas and then they all crashed in a big collision in the front of my brain. But
Yeah, I feel so stuck on this one. Like, I just, it feels so I'm not sure. Okay, one thing that like I definitely think we can talk about that's exciting and something that I think we can kind of deploy as writers is the deep investigation and
Mm,
commitment
mm,
to the wallpaper. So Takashi brought this up earlier. Interesting how it does for the general aspects of the house, and then just the hyper focus on the wallpaper. So right, like the most literary parts of this story, these like insane descriptions are hyper detailed on the wallpaper. And yeah, I mean for me, this is just like a great example of you endow something with meaning as a writer just by giving it attention. You
mhm.
know, just like the volume of description signals that this is relevant, and then it just becomes more and more relevant. So when the
Yeah.
wallpaper is introduced, like it doesn't yet have all the sort of supernatural capacity that it later has, but I think we're being kind of, hey, listen, pay attention, because I'm going to go ahead and talk about this wallpaper for several paragraphs.
Yeah. I mean, did that at any point? I think this is so interesting because at any point did the story feel like dull to you at all, or did you kind of lose interest in it?
I mean, it's tough. Yeah, I mean, I think my brain was kind of like doing several things at once, like trying to analyze. It's a different thing to try to, because like hitherto, I've been kind of taking notes as we go.
Mm,
And this, of course, there's no pause button. So I found myself kind of like there was some processing that was happening, and then I
mm,
sort of missed and had to skip ahead. And then there was like a feeling of disorientation, which then leads to like not like boredom, but like disinterest or something,
mm.
and so I felt that, but I think that's more of just like a sort of experiential thing. I think like I think no, I think I was like pretty wrapped, because I guess what was clear relatively earlier in the story, and I guess this is kind of a cool writery thought too, was that like from the jump we know that a lot is at stake.
Tell me more about that. I like to hear
I
this.
just think that like pretty early in the story, we got a sense that her sanity was at stake. There's just a sense that she's very, very alone
Yes.
early on. I mean, like word 75, like the very beginning of the story, practically. John laughs at me, of course, but one expects that in marriage, right? So, like, from the jump, it's like this woman does not have a partner who supports her. She's in this house that she kind of thinks is haunted. She is unwell. She personally identifies as unwell from the jump. So, I mean, there's like reason why she's not exactly, I don't know if I want to say an unreliable narrator, but from the jump, it's like this person is not well, because they're saying kind of contradictory things kind of right away. And so I felt worried for her really early in the story, which I think it's not a short story. So I think that a testament to its success is that it's really a slow burn, and that like
Mm,
I cared about this person more and more throughout. And it's not like she became in danger halfway through the story. For me, at least, she felt in danger from the beginning.
yeah. That's a really good insight. She has never been safe. Like, and has she ever been free?
And has she ever had any awareness about either her freedom or oppressed status?
Yeah. Yeah.
Takashi Yi 88. You want to read this
Mm.
one, Sarah?
Yeah, Takashi says it's interesting to see a recurring element of sanity in horror. This is like the more insane a character is, the more supernatural it becomes. Yeah, I think that actually ties in really well with what Issa was just talking about with her potentially being an unreliable narrator. And us not understanding or not understanding through her misunderstanding of what's real and what's not and what's really happening to her and how much she is being misled or deluded by other people and how much she is misleading and or deluding herself. And I have my own, I think, reading of this story, but I'm curious, what do folks think about a supernatural element for this story? Like, did she enter a haunted house? Is there something haunting the attic where she is being kept? I'm curious if anybody had that reading of it.
I think that the fact that, yeah, I'm curious what everyone thinks of that as well. I personally thought that actually the way it is at the beginning, that it's like, okay, we're not in a haunted house, kind of helps secure the fact that, like, yes, this lady goes insane. It kind of like deflects. If you're wondering
Yeah.
if she's going insane because the house is haunted and there's like a ghost woman in the wall, no, this is not a haunted house.
Yeah.
This is a woman under the thumb of the patriarchy who's losing her effing mind. Yeah, that's how I read it. I read I'm glad you brought that up, because I think that like that was like on the top deflection.
Yes.
Yeah.
I really liked that too, and it's sort of it's meta in a way. It lets you know, like, hey everybody, I'm aware of what ghost stories are, and I'm aware of haunted houses, and let's just put that out there, and now I'm going to tell you my story. So I think it's an interesting little caveat.
For sure. Okay, well, Sarah, I just feel sort of at a lot. I'm sorry that I just don't have more like just sort of on the dome observations here.
That's
I guess
okay.
as a writer, for you, this story seems to bring you a lot of delight and inspiration and like activate a lot of things for you. Is there any of those feelings that are going to kind of work their way into their writing? Do you share those same sentiments, not just as a reader, but as a writer in regards to the story?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. Thank you for asking that. I think that for me, I really identified with the narrator, like not to the degree, that she ends up being, but just, I had fairly strict parents growing up, and, wasn't allowed to like leave the house or like go out with friends or anything. And so I really feel like I understand, or at least this triggered a memory and an understanding of what it felt like to be trapped, what it felt like to be not shackled, but at the same time not free to move around. And I really love the fact that she writes anyway. Writing out of spite is one of my favorite things. She's told, no, you shouldn't write. And she's like, hee, I'm writing anyway. I'm telling the dead paper my secrets, and nobody can stop me. I really like that little flare of rebellion we see in her. I really latch on to that. And then honestly, I think there's something to be said about, you said earlier, there's a little bit of a contradiction with writing, and does she want to? Is it hard for her? Is it easy for her? Is it freeing for her? Is it, what does even this mean for her? And I think that complicated look at like what writing and creativity are for her is really complicated as it is in real life. Like for me, I am both like drained and energized by writing, at different times in different ways. And I really also identified strongly with, I think near the end, we're getting, again, I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but I think that she is dissociating a little bit. She sees this woman trapped in a place, and I think she's having maybe not an explicit out of body experience, but like, I know what it feels like to like dissociate out of a bad situation. And I identified with that so strongly. And if you are living in a place that feels unsafe, and if you can create your own reality where things make sense to you, and making sense is very relative in this case. I don't know. I identified with so many elements of this story, because of this woman who's trapped. She's a writer. And do you find freedom by escaping, or do you find freedom by going deeper inside? Where are you really free?
I love that. I want to engage with some of these comments here. Takashi Yi88 says, Asa Merritt, there's also the idea of romanticizing violence in relationships. I've seen it in 18th, 19th century fiction, and sadly on dark romance. As in, I laugh at you, held you captive, and humiliate you because I love you and it's for your own good. Jimmy, this is less a haunted house story and way more a descent into madness story, where the creeping horror lies in how we get hints from the very beginning that she will go mad and we must watch. That is one thing that I did track in this story, is kind of the ratcheting up and like the kind of exponentialness of the descent and the turn. Because at first she's really freaked out by the yellow wallpaper. It creeps her out. And then she's kind of into it. And then it's personified, and there's a woman in the wallpaper, and then she's that woman or a woman in the wallpaper. And just that I found really compelling. Just the slow burn, like you're saying, Jimmy, of how quickly and like darkly it descends into madness.
Yeah, there's something about feeling helpless is, she's not unlikable. I was rooting for her. You don't want her to go mad, but all you can do is read the story.
It's interesting that you say that, because like I was most like compelled by her in her like sort of zest for the supernatural. Like when she was most insane was when she was most kind of like almost like the Joker or something, where it's just like, whoa, you're out of your mind, and I want to kind of be adjacent to it because there's something really vital happening.
Yeah, that is extremely interesting. Well, and I think it says a lot about like the lengths that the human mind will go to feel like it has agency, to feel in control.
Right.
What did you think about her husband fainting at the end?
I love it because I feel like it opens the door to several endings. I definitely thought that maybe she was going to take her own life here at the end.
When she's talking about a rope, yeah.
Right. We get a rope, and that, death as freedom, something, there's a lot of kind of like facile narratives there. And I like that those were kind of available to me, but never said.
Yeah.
And so the faint, that one possible idea that was running through my imagination was like, he faints because his wife dies right then. And that's what engendered him to like lose it. I mean, something happens for him to faint, right?
Yeah.
What did you make of it?
Well, so, okay, she's locked herself in the room. Do you mind if I just read this sentence?
Oh, let's hear it.
Okay, so she's like, I threw the key out the window. It's under a leaf. And she yells it 700 times. He goes down, gets the key. He stops short by the door. What is the matter? He cried. For God's sake, what are you doing? I kept on creeping just the same, but I looked at him over my shoulder. I've got out at last, said I, in spite of you and Jane, and I've pulled off most of the paper, so you can't put me back. Now, why should that man have fainted? But he did, and right across my path, so I had to creep over him every time.
Okay, so the most literal idea there, right, is she's on the floor crawling, like a dog or something, right? And he's like, what are you doing? Okay.
I'm imagining, I don't know if this is... Okay, Lord of the Rings, Gollum. I'm like really thinking of like what isolation and desocialization can do to a person. And when she says creeping, I'm just imagining this like hunched over like Gollum figure. And it's, I don't know, kind of disturbing. I love that she uses the word creeping. I creep by daylight. Like it's just, it has such like a weird language of its own too.
Yes,
I don't know. There's,
I totally. It definitely had some. Yeah, like it just felt like an animal word describing a human.
yeah,
And then the clawing of the. I'd love that you brought up Gollum here, because I'm just imagining this figure like clawing at the wall, ripping off the wallpaper. It's insane.
Well, and she says, like, throughout, she's like, oh, these children who lived in this nursery must have been so destructive. There's tooth marks on the bedstead. And then it talks about her, like, chewing on the side of the bed and, like, hurting her teeth. And, yeah. I don't think children were up here before.
Yeah, no. Oh, man. Well, anything else here, Sarah?
I think that I don't know. I really enjoyed reading this story out loud. I love like sharing something I enjoy with people. So this was actually a real treat for me to explore this story with you and everyone here in the comments. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think. I think that we've covered most things. We could get really like nitpicky and be like, oh, why does it say Jane and not Jenny at the end? And like these other little mysteries. But I think that for our general discussion right now, I think that we've like hit all of the key points. And if anybody is curious in a micro analysis, we can do that over in the Discord.
Yeah, there's a Discord. If you're new here, Sarah and I, there's a Discord where these conversations continue. Also, so this is like kind of part 2 of a series. We're looking for more stories to read. So we're looking for classics. We're looking for public domain stories, taking requests. All right, y'all. So if there's a story that you want to hear, we're going to alternate weeks is the tentative plan, reading stories out loud and then talking about them just like we did today. So that is the plan. Sarah and I both have YouTube channels. Subscribe, hang out, join the Discord. Sarah put a link in. I'm going to put a link in as well so that anyone who wants can join. Takashi, a final comment here says, like a caged, well, there's the Discord, like a caged animal, they can do anything to themselves when they feel trapped. Ugh. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and if you go to a zoo where the enclosures are too small, you'll often see little pathways that the animals have worn because they end up creeping around in a pattern. Yeah.
Jimmy says, the key thing about writing insanity is that so much of it can't be explained because it's insanity. That is a cool point, Jimmy.
Yeah.
The allure of logic when writing, that's cool. That's compelling to me. The Lore Hunter says, I think she's making an important statement about the repression of women when she says that most women creep about during the day. P.S. Sorry, I think I misremembered the elements of Wuthering Heights that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, and you're totally if you've seen the Timothy Dalton version of Wuthering Heights where he like slaps her a lot, not cool. So yeah. I was watching that. I was like, oh, Wuthering Heights. I'm excited. And I love Timothy Dalton. And then you watch it and you're like, please stop hitting her. Like, he's slapping her face. He's like, and it's like supposed to be romantic. I don't know. It's gross. Times have changed.
Thankfully. Yeah. Okay. Rock and roll. Thank you for being here, everyone. And yeah, so that's the plan. Tentatively, same time next week. We'll do the same thing. Let us know how you feel about this. If seeking feedback, we're experimenting. So if this felt right, a read aloud followed by a discussion, give us some accepting feedback. So we'll see you in the Discord if you have it. All right.
Thank you for being here. We'll see you soon.
Bye.